it's my pleasure this morning to welcome Jo Richardson. She's already spoke to you. You can read her bio. She wants us to share in the service today and turn it over to Jo. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Hello? So this isn't my typical setting that I would come and speak to people through. And when invited to come here, it made me think, before coming, why now? Why I was asked to come speak about this topic at this point in time. And I think it might be pretty obvious to all of us that the past couple years, and particularly the past couple months, have really been emotionally and spiritually draining to a lot of people. It has been a vexation to my spirit, to say the least. And through the work that I do, I think it's important to come and open up dialogue and open up conversations around very, very difficult topics, things that most people at any opportunity will avoid drudging into. And that's really about 60% of my work most days, is having really difficult dialogue with people. So sometimes I lecture and sometimes I facilitate, meaning that I get people in on the conversation. And today I would like that to be kind of a mix of that. So I will be having the young people walk around with microphones and they'll be scribing for me. And the information that I'm going to share today is not just about, I heard some people asking if I was coming to speak about white privilege. That is going to be part of it, but moreover, I'm going to be talking about the overarching theme of privilege in general and asking everybody to engage in self-reflection about their own identities. And when we think of identity, a lot of times we think of our gender, we think of sexual orientation, we think of our race, but I'm going to look a few levels deeper into that when we think about who we are and who the people that we interact with are. So what I'd like to talk about today, I'm going to use this model, and it's called the social location wheel. And we use that to talk about different intersections of our identity. And we all have a social location wheel, and it's going to look very different. So my scribes? So the social location wheel is sometimes used in social justice trainings to talk about identity, to talk about privilege. So we all have areas that we occupy. And the first piece of the pie, maybe we should bring this out to the middle a little bit so everybody can see. Okay. So above here, I'm going to have you write nation of origin. So when we talk about, and this should be painfully obvious at this point in time, but even when I do these facilitation trainings, sometimes I have people that might not agree with me. When we talk about privilege, we talk about systematic power over another group of people. And when we talk about oppression, we're talking about the people that are on the opposite side of that power. We're talking about people that are systematically oppressed. So when we talk about people of nation of origin, do people that are natural-born citizens or people that immigrate or migrate to this country, who has the power? Who are the people that are the ones that are privileged? Are we sure? Sometimes this is one of the topics that I get some pushback from. So that is true. That is true. So that might be a little asterisk or a caveat. But they operate in other minority statuses. So we'll get there. But for the most part, people that are natural born are the people that have the power in the country. Immigrants, not so much. Would we agree with that? Okay, so right in here we're going to write U.S. born. And as we go through this, I want you to think about where you fall. Do you fall in the privileged category or do you fall into the oppressed category? So in the next piece of the pie, I would like you to add, we'll go with religion. So while obviously we have multiple religions in the United States, we're very diverse, a melting pot. We'll stick to the big four, and we'll say Christianity, Islam, Judaism, and then non-faith or non-believers. Who are the ones that occupy and have the most privilege, do we think? Are you sure? Okay. So we're going to write Christianity. On the next piece of the pie, let's talk about race. So again, we're race. Yep, we're going to write race on the outside. Sorry. Good job. We are a melting pot. There's lots of different race and ethnicity. So when we talk about white, black, African American, Native Americans, Latinos, who holds the most power? Are we sure? Yep. Yep. So we're just going to stick with white. So we're going to put white on the piece of the pie. So let's jump down to the next piece of the pie. Let's talk about something that people don't think about a lot. That able-bodied people don't think of very much. So we're going to talk about ability and disability. So let's write, you can just write ability on the outside. So when we think about being privileged and having access, are people that are physically able-bodied and able-minded, or people that have those challenges or are differently abled? Who has the most power? Okay, so write able-bodied. Let's get into, we'll do gender next. So we'll write sex on the outside. So just write sex, S-E-X. So the sex that you're born, so that means male or female. Now there's a lot of complication in there with gender identity, but when we're just talking about male and female, who are the ones that hold the most power? Okay, so we're going to write men in there. Yes. Okay. That's your feeling on it?
What I'm saying is that the only choice is male or female. What we have is male or female. However you choose, it still comes out male or female. There is no non-male, non-female.
So, I mean, this is speaking to people that identify as transgendered, people that identify as intersex.
What are they identifying as? Are they identifying as male or are they identifying as female? But still, here's what I'm saying.
Okay.
It still comes out male or female.
So as far as sex. Okay. We got a projector.
You know me, guys. I don't need a microphone unless you want to turn it off. So we like to think that we're either born male or we're born female, but that's an oversimplified story. It's not true. People, and I'm terrible at remembering numbers, but there are significant numbers of people born every year whose gender don't neatly into the male category or the female category. But up until now, those people had to hide, or they would have been beaten to death. Yes, they would have been killed for religious reasons and for social reasons. But we can now talk about that there is this vagueness. And so there is a transition. There are people who have their bodies look female, but they don't have the female reproductive organs because they have male chromosomes, but they have a birth defect that doesn't let testosterone act upon them and make their body look male. And that's just one small thing. Anyway,
So I'm going
there's intersex.
yes. Yes. So
One of our owl teachers, by the way.
So I forgot to give my little asterisk, my little sidebar, to say that these conversations, these difficult dialogues that make up most of my day, are very impassioned, and they come from long-standing beliefs and ideas, and it can be difficult to see another person's point of view. Now, in my main job, the job that I work Monday through Friday, I work in sexual health. So I work with people that kind of fall along that spectrum that he's speaking of, where it's not neat male-female identification. I work with many transgendered individuals that have a lot of conflict in their life about where they fall in that on that spectrum. And I understand that it is the most natural thing, and I want to really normalize this, it is the most natural thing to have that discomfort pop up when we see someone that doesn't neatly fall in the male-female box. Because our brains are busy sorting all day long. I can look across this room and my brain quickly goes male, female, male, female, male, female. And that takes a lot of my legwork out. I don't need to think about too much. And I'm socialized to interact with those people based on how I sort them in my brain. And our brains are automatically doing this all the time. So when somebody doesn't neatly fall in that box, our brains can't quickly sort them. And that makes us pretty uncomfortable, because then we're confused and we stop. And that changes how we interact with a person. And like I was talking to the kids about curiosity, when something is different and something is new and something doesn't make sense to us, it tends to make us pretty uncomfortable. And when we're uncomfortable, we're not always at our best. And it's a lot easier when we can look at somebody and we can know exactly what's going on with them.
January's National Geographic, their whole issue was on gender, and it was very, very informative. It's a great, they talk about all of the
nuanced differences?
well, not even the nuanced differences. In different cultures, there are
Yes.
the human beings that are neither male nor female,
Mm-hmm.
because they have both
Organs.
male and female organs, and they are accepted as that, and they are special people. And so anyway, but I came across that and was like, that whole, I mean, like I'm saying, the whole thing is on gender.
And this can be a stumbling block, because we also conflate or put together two ideas, the idea of sex and gender. So when we talk about that, we talk about being cisgendered. Has everybody heard that term? Cisgendered. So I like this room. Everyone's like, yes, we know what that means. Okay. So cisgendered means that you identify psychologically in your mind, your gender, the way that you identify on the femininity, masculinity spectrum, matches the sex that you were born with. So I am a cisgender female. Surprise. I'm very feminine, and I identify with femininity, and I was born a woman. Now, there's many women out there that, to varying degrees, don't really identify with that. And likewise, men, the same. And that also indicates power and privilege. So I would add to this, for privileged groups, the cisgendered male. So a man that identifies with his male traits and masculinity, whatever that socially means at the time, CIS. Okay. Oh, good job. Okay. So I know that this can be a contentious topic, and and one of the things that I try to do, and I haven't exactly mastered always, is that I want to make sure that everybody feels heard and that there is some general consensus. Would we agree that in society that we live in here, that a cisgendered, meaning that a person that is born as a man, who identifies as a man in masculine traits, has the most privilege? Okay. Well, sure, but there. Sure, and I feel like they might get different pushback from society.
Okay, now, I have 7 sisters.
Yes.
So to me, I was raised for you female.
Okay.
I was raised to care, like, to
Mm-hmm.
and be kind-hearted. So to me, honestly, like, with the whole masculinity thing, I do not see myself there. I feel that,
Mm-hmm.
in my eyes, I would rather go shopping with you females. I'd rather
Mm-hmm.
go do stuff for you females and honestly not care about NASCAR and go drinking beer.
And those are stereotypical things that.
Typical things for males, and to me, that's just like, I'd rather, I don't know, be there in general for you girls than going drinking with my buds. I'm just saying.
And I certainly hope, and something that I do observe of a little bit, is a more normalization of, and that's why I said whatever society means right now to be a man. And I feel like people that don't fall into the stereotypical norms do also receive some pushback, and they fall up against their otherness. Anybody else want to comment on this? This is actually the one that I don't really get a lot of heated conversation around. That was a little bit surprising. Okay. But I like it. This is the sort of stuff I like. Okay. Welcome. Buckle up. Adjust your seats, right?
I have a gender fluid friend. She was born female. Sometimes she feels female, sometimes male, sometimes both, sometimes neither. It just depends on how she's feeling that day.
And I'm guessing that sometimes she is met with some confusion and hostility walking through life like that.
There's been times, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
She's also been president of GSA.
GSA, you want to tell everybody what that is?
Usually means gay, straight,
Alliance. Okay.
So it can be gender sexuality alliance.
Alliance. Okay. Okay. So let's move on to the next piece of the pie. Going once, going twice. Okay. Does everybody feel like we have a consensus? Okay. Okay. So let's talk about, I got a little off track, sexual orientation. So we write sexual orientation on there. So there are a lot of options for that as well. There's heterosexuality, homosexuality, bisexuality, asexuality, pansexual. There's lots of language around that. But when we look at culture and when we look at society, the society that we live in, what is most normalized? Yeah. And it's usually, so that's important. So it's hypersexual heterosexuality. Yes. So we're just going to write, you can just write hetero. You don't have to write the whole thing out. Good job. Oh, we got some blushing going on. So let's talk a little bit about class. So just write class on the outside. So class, when we talk about social, economic situations for individuals, we're going to grossly oversimplify this. So we're going to say people living in poverty, abject poverty, people living in lower middle class. We're going to say upper middle class and wealthy. I'm not going to give like a dollar amount to that. Okay, those top tier people, the cabinet. We're just going to say that. I got a clap here. There's sometimes it doesn't go over very well. Who are the people that are the people making the decisions? The structural. Well, okay, yeah. So we're just going to write the wealthy. Now I'm curious to see how this last section goes over. Okay.
That I think that the wealthy have a lot of power to influence groups within culture, but if we actually practice what we say we have in this country and we use the power of the vote, I think that we can tame the wealthy. We did it 100 years ago when previous oligarchs and corporations ran the U.S. And I'd like to say that we could do that again if we understand the power of
Organizing.
majority and organizing. So I still have hope.
Yeah. I co-sign all of that, but currently, would you say that it's still right now? Oh.
Hello.
It's me.
Okay, so very interested in history all of my life. I've taught it, and I'm just going to throw this out there as a premise. I'm not sure I can prove this, but following up on what said, there may be more tension in this category and more fluidity perhaps than any other category, depending on the times, depending on the issues, depending on who's in power in terms of the government. I agree with Raina. This is not a cookie-cutter category like male, female. There is more tension and more ambiguity, I think, in this particular category.
As far as the powers that be in stakeholders?
Where does the power lie, right? But I agree, right now, wealthy gets my vote.
Okay.
I agree the cabinet represents.
A good snapshot of that.
Oh, sure.
NPR had an interview of a woman whose husband was killed in the voter rights struggles of 1964.
Okay.
And her comment was, if you don't vote, you don't count. It's the people who elect these people are responsible for what we have right here. And this is, you can vote, and if the people who voted for Barack Obama in 2008 would have showed up for the election in 2010, we wouldn't have had the Tea Party in this mess.
And we've treaded into the waters. So there are so some of that, yes, but there's also a lot of flipping that occurred of counties that overwhelmingly voted for Obama, that then those same voters flipped and voted, I can't even say his name. Okay, midterms. Okay. So, yeah, Democratic Party usually has horrific turnouts in those midterm elections. And we could be having a shift in that if we can harness this energy. I agree. I concur. Another hand up. Okay. So I'm going to do a pivot. I'm sick of that word too. So, but are we all in agreement that currently right now, society, I need to double time this. Society as is, the powers that be are held by the wealthy? Yes. And the last, I brought this up here because I knew this was going to happen to me. So we're going to talk about age. So the powers that be, and we're going to oversimplify this in range. So we're going to say young people from 0 to 35 will be the young. The middle will be 35 to 75. And then, you guys are who made the cut? And I didn't make up these ranges. That's my little asterisk. I didn't make this up. And then, so for the later in life will be the 75 and on. So when we look at the people that are in charge, the peoples whose voices are most heard, would we say the young folks, the middle-aged, which would be not technically middle-aged, but the 35 to 75, or the later in year folks, who holds the most power? The middle. So we're just going to write middle. You can write 35 to 75. Okay, so what I want everybody to do, I'm going to try to hustle this up. I tend to get wordy sometimes. I want everyone to think of how many pieces of the pie that they own, personally. So I'll color mine in. Surprise. I'm a white lady. Maybe I need to. I'm just, personally, I mean, I feel comfortable sharing my stuff, but I want you guys to think of your own. So I'm coloring in U.S. born. I'm coloring in white. And that's all I got. Yes. Yes, I am. You guys keep it going, guys. We're gonna say it's my charisma. That. Okay. No. So this is actually what I was going to expound on. So the importance of assumption. So as I present as someone who appears to be, spry and healthy, most of my entire life, from early childhood on until now, has been a pretty difficult road with physical health, with chronic illness and chronic pain. So every day there's like the little smiley faces in the hospital where you adjust yourself. I'm never on the lower end. It's always like mid-range. But I don't look that way. And people interact with me in a way that assumes a lot about how I move through the world. And I feel like there is a lot of invisibility for a lot of people. And that's something I want people to consider. So if you hold a piece of the pie, there are a lot of people out there that don't have the piece of the pie. And that's allyship, is when you will be the voice for the people when you have the privilege and they do not. And it's not just about, even though currently there is a lot of increased racial tension and a need for white allies and allyship, there are a lot of other areas in which you need to be the voice. So because I have 10 minutes, we're going to talk about the do's and don'ts. I need my scribe back. Oh. So we're going to talk about the do's and don'ts. Oh, there it is. Whatever color you want. So let's talk about do's. First of all, So I want to say that this is my list of do's and don'ts, but it wasn't formed by me because I am not the be-all and end-all expertise on allyship. And I actually consulted with a lot of people that are in this work with me, people that don't have the same white privilege that I have, that don't have the same U.S.-born privileges that I have. And this is the list that I came up with. But first I want to ask people, when you hear the term allyship, what does that mean for you? To help whenever possible. To stand with them. A friend. Core values, to stand up. Yeah. So shutting it down when it's going on. Even if they're not there. So don't be complicit. Don't be complicit in the disregard of others.
How do you do that? Do you ask the person that's saying something that you think is discriminatory? What do you mean? Why do you ask them first?
So I feel like this is a good jumping off point to say, I don't have the time to do all the hows, but are there people in this room that are interested in the hows and how to do this? Because different personalities and different temperaments are going to feel far more comfortable shutting things down in different ways. So, and I feel like that's also a spectrum. As you get more comfortable with shutting things down, that's going to look a lot different on how you execute this.
And there's potential for us to do this meeting. That's why she's bringing
Yes. So I'm big on, so by trade, I am a clinical behavioral health therapist. So I train people behaviorally in skills acquisition. So that means things that they don't know how to do. I teach people how to do them. And if this is an area of skill that people feel that they would like to enhance, we could work something out. But just the do's and don'ts, real quick. And by real quick, I mean 5 minutes, and that's it. Ask the person if they. So I'm going to say for the do's and don'ts of your allyship. So no matter what group that you're talking about, whether you are a racial ally, a sexual orientation ally, no matter where you are, these kind of go across the board. So the do, I'm going to say, is listen hard. There are going to be times that you are with others and you want to stand up for the person, but that might be your time to listen. And when we think we know what's right, it's hard to sit there and listen sometimes. Do we got that? Okay. And this is the phrase that I use when doing these trainings. So I would say number 2 is check your people. That means if you are in the in group, the privileged group, with other privileged people, whether that be racially, sexual orientation, class, check it and stop it in the moment. Now that can look a lot of different ways. It can be playful, it can be direct. I don't recommend using hostility because that's usually just met with more hostility. But finding your way to check your people, because the quiet is being complicit in it. And probably the most painful thing, number 3, is prep and be prepared for rejection. This will not be an easy road. You will lose friends. You will lose relationships. You may lose family. And be aware of what you're signing up for. At least in my house, holidays have become a whole different monster. Now everyone's just like, shut up, she's here. Don't get her going. That's okay. For me, that's okay, but that might not be okay for other people. And you have to understand what your investment is and how invested you are going to be in this. And any investment will have consequences be prepared to be rejected. Be prepared to get very uncomfortable, but also learning to sit with discomfort a little bit and know that it passes. So the do nots. And these are things that I think are every bit, perhaps more important. So I call it, number 1, please don't engage in ally theater. That's what I call it, ally theater. Ally theater, where you are the most insightful and awake person in the room, and you're going to teach all these ignorant people about how they're wrong. And that you're going to speak for the oppressed instead of inviting the oppressed in on the conversation. And you make it about your emotions. It is tempting, and that is something that I check. When I'm very impassioned and enraged, I'm like, this is not about me. Please remember, this is not about you. Don't do ally theater, because that has some unintended consequences. The oppressed party recognizes that, and it does not sit well. Number 2, and this is hard because I feel like anybody that is awake to injustice goes through a period of time. Don't hate your own people. Don't be mad at your own people. That's something I see a lot of right now, is people being viciously angry at people that are in their group that they don't agree with. When I started the conversation earlier today with the children, I talked about curiosity. There needs to be a return to that. When you're noticing that you're getting activated, you're getting upset, you're getting frustrated, you're planning your retort while that other person is still talking, take a breath and listen. Don't get angry, or don't express your anger there, because that is going to have the double down effect. That person will buckle down further, and you're not going to be able to have a connection with them, which is hard. I went through, I'm not going to lie, I went through like a white hating period when I first became engaged in social justice work. But it's not helpful. It's going to burn you out. And the third, don't expect, and that kind of correlates to the last do, don't expect praise. Don't expect a thank you. Don't expect a return, because in the end, allyship isn't about that you're doing this for yourself. This will not be an easy road at all. It'll be uncomfortable, and you probably won't hear thank you. So I would like to open it up. Look at that time, right on the nose. I'm usually go like over, so I'm very impressed with myself right now. Questions, comments, concerns, reactions. You have approximately 30 seconds. Go. Mr. Straw? Was that your last name?
It is, thank you. With privilege comes responsibility.
Yes. Whether you like it or not, whether you accept it or not.
Yeah, I love what you presented today. And avoiding theater, that's hard. But we can all minimize it.
Mm-hmm.
And not expecting a thank you. What struck me was, I bet you nobody said thank you to Rosa Parks until decades and decades after she, took on the busing system. So.
And there's a lot of misconceptions about her. I've heard a lot of judgmental statements like all she did was sit down. People don't understand the history of peaceful protest and resistance. So no.
I guess my biggest one is the whole expecting praise. I go above and beyond, and that's like the one thing I kind of look for. I crave a praise, and like that kind of hit home for me.
So one of the things that I think could happen here in a relationship, if people want trainings moving forward, is in allyship, whether that be racial or sexual orientation, is having more allies in your in-group, so people that you align with, to be able to process and work through some of the difficult emotions, because you are going to get rejection, you're not going to get praise. But when you have other like-minded allies, those are the relationships, I think, that can help reinforce you and put the wind back in your sails. And that might be a place where you can get the praise that you need.
I'd like to add something to the don't really quick.
Okay.
Don't expect them to have to answer your question. Yes, be curious. Yes, ask questions. Be respectful when you ask questions. But if they don't want to talk about it, they don't owe that to you.
And please don't make people be the spokesperson for their minority status. I always find that, like, as soon as people find out that I'm not straight and that I have a female partner, it becomes a Q&A, and it usually escalates really quickly, and I become very uncomfortable, and then I become the spokesperson. Please don't do that to people. I don't want to be the spokesperson. That's a lot of responsibility. I don't know if I'm up for the challenge.
Histrionics is my ace of spades.
Okay.
So I think as an ally, you also have to be the safe person, so that people who
Yes.
look like me will come to me and ask me, what was it like to be in an interracial relationship? What is it like to raise a biracial child? And so then it's my responsibility to decide, how much do I want to share, and
How much am I willing
do
to
I
talk?
want to help educate you and help you be the better person that you can be. So to be a safe person, especially if you're more privileged than others, is part of that responsibility.
Yes. And that's a personal decision, so that you might be more comfortable with that, and if another person that falls into that, those specific categories doesn't, people have to be okay with that as well. Anybody else? Okay. Oh, wait. Nope, and there's a lot of really interesting research. I don't have time to get into it, and it's really, really nerdy. But actually, when you are giving people new information that is counter evidence to what they believe, because they interpret it as a physical attack, an attack on them. It's just challenging their ideas, but they register it as a physical attack, and actually, you have the adverse effect. Even when you're giving people facts, they double down. They buckle down to their position. Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. In group. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else?